The game of football is won and lost in the trenches. So if you're looking to win, which every NFL team is, you need to have a good offensive line. So today I'm showing the big boys, the unsung heroes, some love as I'm ranking all 32 NFL offensive lines heading into the 2025 season. This will obviously include the 5 starters and their talent, but also depth, coaching, continuity, and projection of rookies and more. Because as we know, the offensive line is about the unit as a whole. If you have one elite player and 4 turnstiles, that just isn't going to be enough to earn the top spot at all. I will be ranking these offensive lines by putting them in order and into tiers, which you can see on your screen now. And the tiers themselves are pretty self-explanatory. First, we have the elite tier. These are the best of the best offensive lines in the league. It's not that every player themselves is elite. It's almost impossible for a position group which has 5 players in it for all of those players to be elite. It is not quarterbacks, obviously, or running backs or wide receivers. There are 5 guys, so it's very rare for that to happen. But whether through talent or coaching or depth or all of the above, they are an elite unit. Then the next step down from that, we have great. These are not the best, but they are still very, very good. You can rely on them week on week to protect the quarterback, make lanes in the run game. Then we have good, not going to blow anyone away, but they are reliable and consistently so. Then we have average. This is, as the name suggests, kind of not good, not bad, just fine. Then we have questionable. This is where you start to really get into trouble if your team is ranked here. You might have notable weak points along the offensive line, which might get exposed week on week, maybe limited depth, maybe a lack of overall talent. And last and definitely least, we have the bad categories. This is the worst offensive lines in the NFL. There is a lack of depth. There is a lack of quality starters, which will very likely undermine the entire offense as a whole. Because if you have a bad offensive line, you're more than likely going to be a bad offense. And before we get into the rankings, make sure you subscribe for more NFL offseason content. Make sure you like the video and leave a comment. Let me know, do you disagree or agree with my rankings? I want to hear them all, so let me know about it. And we're going to start with the Chicago Bears. And I'm loving how their new offensive line is looking, especially with Ben Johnson, who's come over, and the scheme that he brings with him from Detroit, I think is going to revolutionize what we know as the Chicago Bears offense. And that offense, the offensive system rather, relies very, very heavily on having a good offensive line. And we've seen the Bears address that this offseason. They have obviously Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright at their 2 tackle spots, but they've added Joe Thuney at left guard, Drew Dalman at center, and Jonah Jackson at right guard. And having that 3/5 of the offensive line overhauled does bring into question the continuity, but under Ben Johnson, what we've seen from him over the years, I'm not that concerned about that. And ultimately, the talent upgrade is by far the most important thing. Joe Thuney only allowed 1 pressure from week 5 to 12 on 300 pass blocking snaps. Him and Jonah Jackson are a really strong duo, and Drew Dalman is really good as well. Now, Braxton Jones been improving year on year. Darnell Wright took a big step as well in his rookie year. Jones has a health issue, but hopefully he'll be back for the beginning of the season. And I also really like the pick of Ozzie Trapillo, the rookie in the 2nd round. I think he gives the Bears a bit of freedom in case of injury, but more importantly, financial freedom a few years down the line. But we're focusing on 2025 only. And considering that the Bears' offensive line last year, the Bears' offense as a whole last year wasn't good. Caleb Williams holding onto the ball for too long, offensive linemen not really being able to block for him properly. I think this year it's going to look entirely different. I think Caleb Williams will get the ball out quicker. The offensive line will be in a better position to protect him. They are more talented. The system is going to be better. I think this offensive line is going to look so far removed from what we kind of expect a Chicago Bears offensive line to look at that I think it's going to surprise a lot of people, even though we have quite high expectations of it. And I can see this unit really being a top 10 overall offensive line. So for me, it's going to go pretty firmly in the great category. Not elite, but definitely great. Then we have the Detroit Lions. Ben Johnson's alma mater, a very fitting team to move on to. The Bears get a Ben Johnson bump because of the coaching and the system that he brings. The Lions, therefore, are going to get a Ben Johnson knock because they've lost him. Now, they haven't only lost Ben Johnson. They've also lost Frank Ragnow. Those are two massive losses for an offensive line. You have the offensive system, and you have one of the better players of your offensive line, a stalwart in the middle of that unit, bringing reliability and great run blocking, great pass blocking consistently week on week to the middle of the offensive line. And he was a literal anchor for the offensive line, both physically but also metaphorically. Again, having someone so reliable in the middle of that unit, protecting for a quarterback like Jared Goff, who really does struggle with interior pressure, it's incredibly valuable to an offense, and losing that is absolutely massive. They've also lost Kevin Zeitler in free agency. He's not quite Frank Ragnow, don't get me wrong, but another interior offensive lineman that has been lost. Now, yes, they drafted Tate Ratledge. He's an exciting young rookie, 3 years starting at Georgia. He might play center, he might play guard. I don't think you really want a rookie center calling protection for Jared Goff in your offensive system. Maybe that will go to Graham Glasgow and Tate Ratledge will play guard. Either way, he's a good player, but young. They also have Miles Fraser, another young player, and Christian Mahogany they drafted last year. Now, I think that having two first-time starters on an offensive line, which previously was an incredibly elite unit, is going to result in a step back in play. I think defensive lines are going to go after Christian Mahogany, a 6th-round pick last year. They're going to go after Tate Ratledge, a good but inexperienced player. Young offensive linemen take a while to adapt to the league, most notably with tackles, but definitely with interior players too. And I just think these offenses are going to go after the two weak links on the unit. Now, obviously, Penei Sewell is absolutely elite. Obviously, Taylor Decker is absolutely fantastic. They are a really strong tackle duo. You cannot knock them for that at all. But it's the interior with a quarterback like Jared Goff that does concern me. And there's a lot of overhaul from the system and on the unit itself. Previously, it has been a great offensive line, no doubt about it. But I have too many concerns to put them in anything higher than average. And there's a really high ceiling, I think, if Ratledge and Mahogany are as good as the Lions hope they're going to be, then this unit might not lose a step. But right now, where we are in this point in the offseason, I have nagging doubts, which is forcing me to keep this unit in average. Then we have the Houston Texans. We're going to start with the Texans over the Jags here. We are fully cooked. I'm a Texans fan. This is going to be a disastrous season. And it's because we allowed 209 pressures last year, which was the 7th worst. We allowed the most sacks at 40. That's because 4/5 of our offensive line was bad. The other 1/5 that wasn't bad, Larry Tunsil, and we traded him away. So we have willingly made our bad offensive line worse. He was the only decent player on a shocking offensive line. Jarrett Patterson, he is young, cool, but 16 pressures, not what you want. Titus Howard moved from right tackle to guard. He allowed 41 pressures. That's 4th most among guards. Laken Tomlinson, 4th highest pressure rate allowed. Blake Fisher allowed 11 pressures and 7 sacks in 10 games. And the pièce de résistance for these last two, Laken Tomlinson, who is currently slated to be our starting left guard, he allowed the 4th highest pressure rate. Not good. And the cherry on the cake here is Cam Robinson, our new left tackle, to replace someone like Larry Tunsil. He allowed 64 pressures, which was 1st among all offensive linemen. Literally had the most pressures in the league. It's like Avengers Assemble for crap offensive linemen. And we did draft Ariante Ursary. Great. I would have liked us to probably draft a tackle earlier than that so that we could start him reliably. But, and I like the player, but as I said before, offensive line and specifically tackle, it's very unrealistic to expect a rookie to start and immediately be good. So, unless our new offensive coordinator is basing his offense on a scheme which means you have to get the ball out in 1.5 seconds only, spoiler alert, doesn't exist, we're in a world of trouble. I think this is going to be the worst offensive line in the league. This is going to be pretty comfortably, I would say, my 32nd ranked offensive line. Now we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Moving on from Cam Robinson, big win for them. I think this unit as a whole, though, is going to get an upgrade with Liam Cohen in the building. I think Ezra Cleveland should return to his Minnesota form. He was a strong run blocker and decent enough in pass pro. Robert Hainsey from Tampa Bay, he knows the system, playing with Liam Cohen. Patrick McCarry from the Ravens, he's a reliable veteran. Not got the highest ceiling now at his age, but does bring a high floor. And Walker Little, I'm a massive Walker Little fan at left tackle. I loved him coming out in the draft. He's consistently improved year on year. He's a good run blocker, good in pass pro, only allowed 13 pressures. And Anton Harrison, their high draft pick from 2023, he's trending in the right direction, but he's still not there yet. Now, I do like the players, but 3/5 of them, so barring Walker Little and Patrick McCarry, have a concerningly low floor. And that's what I'm really worried about with the Jags, is that I think if we're looking at their range of outcomes, it's quite big. And with offensive line, I think it tends to skew more towards its floor generally than its ceiling. 'Cause it's so hard to get 5 guys playing their best week after week. So I'm going to put them in questionable. It's not bad, definitely, and it could be better than that. But again, when 3/5 of them are giving me nagging doubts, it's going to have to stay in questionable. Then the Carolina Panthers. I think we're going to see the investment that the Panthers made last offseason kind of begin to take fruit now. Because if we're being honest, the Panthers season offensively last year, and defensively as a team, was awful. It was dreadful up until Bryce Young's resurgence in week 13. And I think the offensive line took a knock as a result. And I think with better quarterback play, we're going to see that offensive line hopefully take more steps. And I think on paper, they're a solid unit. Nobody is going to stand out here necessarily, but equally, I don't really see a weak link. You got Ike Ekwonu at left tackle. He's really good in the run game. He's, getting there in pass pro, not what you'd be hoping for if you drafted someone like that as early as you did a few years ago now. But if you take his draft position out of it, he's a decent player at this point, I would say. And I'm getting excited about his potential development. And if we think about it as his rookie season, he was bad, as all offensive linemen are. And then last year was a kind of wash because of how bad the team was. I think we can start to feel decent about the trend that he's taking. Then we got Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. They were added last offseason. I think they are high floor, solid guards. Again, struggled last year, but so did everyone. And then Austin Corbett as well. I think he is reliable enough when healthy and when he's on the team. Now, this is a very balanced, I would say, and good offensive line. You've got good depth pieces as well in Braden Christensen. He can play all 5 spots. Josh Nyman as well. I like Chandler Zavala. This is a high floor, I would say, offensive line at this point. Maybe not the highest ceiling, but I feel quite good about this unit being good, at least, I would say. And dare I say, it's kind of quietly great with the depth it has. I think it's going to be at the top of good for me here, I would say, the Panthers offensive line. I do think that it might quietly surprise people, but I've been burnt by the Panthers before in my projection of them, so I'm going to stick with good here. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not a great year for them to have a questionable offensive line, I would say. Broderick Jones at left tackle, he's fast looking like a bust, I would say. 7th most pressures allowed among tackles, 45, and allowed the 2nd most sacks at 11. Isaac Semelar, he's reliable enough from Philadelphia. Anyone playing under Jeff Stoutland, I'll talk about later, will be really good or decent enough. Zach Fraser, I really liked him coming out. I think he's had a promising rookie year. Excited to see what he can do this year. Mason McCormick, another young player. He's not Fraser, but he's fine. And then Troy Fautanu, he hardly played because of a dislocated knee, but I have high hopes for him. I really liked him coming out in the draft, and this is essentially his rookie season, so he might not be the best immediately, but long-term, I like his outlook. But again, we are just looking at this year, and offensive line is a weak link position, and I fear that with Jones at left tackle, Fautanu at right tackle, and McCormick at right guard, I'm looking at 3 potential weak links there. And Aaron Rodgers is not about to help this offensive line with his legs, is he? So I think they could even be bad. I think they could be at the top of bad here, the Pittsburgh Steelers, with what I'm looking at. If Fautanu is good, I think just having 2 questionable tackles, one almost definitely bad and one questionable at best, it's going to be a hard spin for me to not put you in bad, honestly. Yeah, I'm going to leave them in bad. The Bengals. Has this team ever had a good offensive line? Genuinely. Their offensive line issues have plagued this team for as long as I can remember, from as long as Joe Burrow has been part of the team at least. I know defense was the primary issue kind of going into the draft, but I think the offensive line was a quiet issue for why this team was as bad as it was. They allowed the 4th most pressures in the league last year at 220. We have Orlando Brown at left tackle. He missed time last year and he wasn't great when he was healthy. Maybe he'll bounce back, but that's a maybe. We then got Dylan Fairchild, the rookie this year, 3rd round rookie. not generally where you find the best offensive lineman. Interior offensive lineman maybe more so, but I think if you're expecting a third rounder to bring some stability to your offensive line, I think you might be mistaken there. He could be a weak point, definitely. Could also be good, but again, questionable, I would say. Ted Karras, he's a nice pass blocking center. Can't really knock him. Lucas Patrick, he's a fine veteran at this point. And Amarius Mims, he had a tricky rookie season. Wasn't awful, but he needs to take a step. So again, we're kind of looking at not a particularly strong offensive line here, I would say. They're not much better than the Steelers, ultimately. So I'm going to put them, I think the Steelers might be the top of bad, and I think the Bengals will probably be the bottom of questionable, is what I would say. Now, the New York Jets. I think this offensive line is going to be very good. I just don't know if it'll be very good in time for this season. They have a really good young unit. They've got Amar Membu, their draft pick this year in the first round. They've got Olu Fashanu, who was their draft pick last year. Joe Tippmann, who was drafted in 2023. And Elijah Verataka, who was drafted in 2021. That's an exciting young core, 100%, which is why I wanted the Jets to draft Membu, because they're not going to compete this year. They're not looking to protect a young quarterback. They've got Justin Fields. Why not invest in the offensive line when it's basically a free hit, essentially? Now, the interior are strong as a whole unit, definitely. I really like John Simpson, and I really like Elijah Verataka as the two guards. I think they're really solid. I think Joe Tippmann started out tough. He was a raw prospect coming out, definitely, and I think he's getting there. But it's the tackle duo that I think are the ones to quote unquote worry about. And I don't mean that in the long term at all. I think in the long term they're going to be good, these guys. I trust Fashanu and I trust Membu. But again, they're young, and it takes time for young offensive linemen to adapt to the league. And Olu Fashanu last year was no exception to the rookie struggles. And Membu is likely going to be the same. Fields is going to hold on to the ball for a long time. Yeah, Rodgers wasn't helpful either with his legs, but Fields is going to hold on to that ball for 2 seconds plus, almost every drop back realistically. And I'm worried about how those two are going to hold up for 2025, not long term. But again, this is about the 2025 outlook. I think there's lots of reasons to be optimistic, but there are a few things that are holding me back from saying that this is going to be the year they're going to be the best version of the New York Jets offensive line, frankly. I think 2026, 2027, I think they'll be comfortably good to great. But I think this year, I'm going to maybe be positive with the Jets. But then I can't have the Jets in good faith behind the Lions, realistically. So I'll put them just behind the Lions in average there, I think. The Cardinals, an underrated group of offensive linemen here. I think the Cardinals generally are not rated by very many people apart from their fans. They allowed the fourth lowest pressures in 2024, 134. And I think we're going to see similar numbers again this year, similar kind of performance from them as a unit. Paris Johnson Jr., one of the better young tackles in the league. Then you've got Brown, Froholt, Adams, Williams. They're all solid in their own right, going from left guard to right tackle there. And they've got Kelvin Beachum and Royce Newman, who I think are good depth pieces as well. So this is the definition to me of a quietly good to great and reliably so offensive line. They are definitely going to be better than the Panthers. It's just, do I put them at the back end of great? I think the Cardinals are a back end of great offensive line. That seems fair to me. Let me know in the comments if you disagree. And again, if you haven't already, subscribe. Dallas Cowboys. The offensive line has always been their strength. And after a disastrous 2024 offensively and Zach Martin's retirement, will it continue to be in 2025? There's definitely a changing of the guards in Dallas, I would say, at this point, with Tyler Guyton, Cooper Beebe, Tyler Booker all coming in. Booker, I wasn't personally high on. He was just in my top 50 or thereabouts. He's an absolute menace in the run game, but as a result of that weight and that power, he's not that quick on his feet in pass protection, which did concern me. It depends on the offensive system that you run. He fits the Cowboys' offensive system nicely. But again, nevertheless, in pass pro, it's that maneuverability that I do get worried about. Tyler Smith is a good guard. He's strong in run and pass blocking. Cooper Beebe, I like at center. Terrence Steele, he wasn't great at right tackle, 41 pressures and 9 sacks, but he is, developing, and you hope to see more from him, definitely. And then Tyler Guyton at left tackle, I think he's got a lot to prove. I didn't love the pick for him last year, frankly. I thought it was a bit of a reach. So we're looking at a young, lots of Tylers as well, 3 Tylers, but lots of young players. You've got Guyton, Smith, Beebe, and Booker all drafted in the last 3 years. So I think the unit last year was better than the season that the Cowboys had actually suggests ultimately. But there's a lot of youth. Dak, I think coming back would definitely raise the floor and give a bit more stability to the offense as a whole. Tyler Booker might suggest a return to that kind of ground and pound run game that we knew under Zeke. I think they're definitely going to be average. They could even be better than that. But I think with the youth they have, it's just I think they're better than the Jets. I think I'd rather have the Jets offensive line at this point. Yeah, I would rather have the Jets offensive line. Again, a higher variance. Maybe they're both young. Both of them have young offensive linemen on that unit. So I'm going to stick with that. The Eagles. Wonder why the Eagles won the Super Bowl? Look no further than the offensive line. They are an incredibly talented unit. This is probably the closest that we're going to get with one other team that is almost elite at every single position along the offensive line. But I also think that what makes the Eagles such a great offensive line unit is that they are greater even that than the sum of their parts. Even though each player is so good to elite, they're almost better as a unit than individually, which is what you want from your offensive line, which has to work as a unit. They were great in run blocking, great in pass protection. They were 6th in ESPN's pass block win rate, and they were 9th in the run game win rate. They have Jordan Mailata, IPP's finest, got a shout out the international players. He's one of the best left tackles in the game right now, undeniably so. Landon Dickerson, been a great guard to good guard for the last 4 years. Cam Jurgens, the Travis Kelce replacement, drafted, 3 years ago, has fit in seamlessly, I would say, to the Eagles offensive line, which is why they've not missed a beat since he's left, really. Tyler Steen, he's the only question mark, I would say, at this point at right guard. An internal promotion, trust the coaching, I'll talk about that in a minute. But ultimately, Lane Johnson, the best offensive lineman in the league right now, dare I say. Him and Mailata are definitely the best offensive tackle duo in the league, no questions asked. Continuity and talent with 4 returning offensive linemen. You almost can't ask for more, genuinely. And they have, obviously, Jeff Stoutland, the best offensive line coach in the league, bar none. What he does, the Jeff Stoutland University just turns offensive linemen into perennial Pro Bowl, if not all pro players, is unbelievable. He turned Jordan Mailata, a rugby player who had never played a competitive snap of American football in his life, into one of the best left tackles in the game. Like, how do you do that? He'd never even seen the game on TV. Like, to do that is unbelievable. He is to offensive linemen what Kyle Shanahan and his system is to quarterbacks. Really, he just turns these players into the unbelievable elite players at their position. It is the best offensive line in football, hands down, and it is comfortably going in the elite tier. We then had the Las Vegas Raiders. I think with the Raiders, they were bad offensively last year as a whole, and I really don't think that was down to the offensive line, really. Yes, they had the worst run game in the league, but I would argue that despite how I would normally spin it, that was actually due to the terrible running back talent they had last year, not due to the offensive line, which I actually think is pretty decent. And yes, they did allow the 7th most sacks last year, but again, the quarterback play, the offensive system really wasn't great. They've now got, or already had, Colton Miller, who I think is incredibly underrated. He, no one really pays attention to the Raiders, I think, in recent years, but he is really good. They've got Jackson Powers-Johnson, an already good young center. Absolutely loved him coming out of the draft last year. This unit, I think, will be improved by both a huge upgrade to their quarterback situation in, obviously, Geno Smith, who was fantastic last year for the Seahawks at offsetting interior pressure, putting his offensive line in the best position to succeed, but also by having a massive upgrade at running back in Ashton Genty, who is going to, of course, create his own yards, but also take what the offensive line actually gives him, be able to read blocks and take those easy yards and then hit the home run plays when it's there. And I think this is, at its core, an above-average offensive line, which is going to take a step this year thanks to exterior factors. But nevertheless, the talent they've always had and the ability they've always had is still there. And I think they're going to give their quarterback and their running back the best opportunity to get the yards they need to get. I'm gonna put them in the back end of good, I think. Yeah, I am. Denver Broncos. The Broncos, guys, are a damn good team on paper. A damn good team. I really wasn't appreciative of that fact until I've done these videos and done these kind of breakdowns team by team, because the defense gets all the love. But the offensive line, I think, is just as good, genuinely. They've got, from left to right tackle, Garrett Bowles, Ben Powers, Luke Wattenberg, Quinn Miners, Mike McGlinchey. Now, you might not know those guys. They might not be the Trent Williamses, the Landon Dickersons, the Penei Sewells. As a unit, they are so good. They were first in ESPN's pass block win rate. They were first in run block win rate. They allowed the least pressures at 110 last year. Statistically, this was, and I think could be again, the best offensive line in the league. Now, for me, the Eagles, I think talent-wise and coaching-wise is why they edge the Broncos here. But Garrett Bowles, 7th in offensive tackle pass block win rate per ESPN. Mike McGlinchey, 6th in offensive tackle pass block win rate per ESPN. That is a very good tackle duo. We've then got Luke Wattenberg, Quinn Miners, Ben Powers. They were 2nd, 3rd, and 5th in interior pass blocking win rate. Player for player, find me 5 players that are going to be ranked as highly as those guys in those stats. You're going to struggle. And on the field, they're absolute dogs. I mean, Quinn Miners, good grief. Like, he is unbelievable. He is an engine room. He brings the juice. He sets the tone. He is so good. They are fantastic in the run game. They are excellent in the pass game. So well-rounded, very well coached. It's an elite offensive line. If Wattenberg can take another step and Sean Payton can continue to develop his offense with Bo Nix, this team is going to do some damage next year. It's going to do some damage. With the defense as well, they are comfortably, I would say, the 2nd best offensive line unit in the league. The Packers, their offseason approach to the offensive line was odd and inconsistent, but looking at the players they have, not approaching their team building, it's a strong unit. They allowed the 7th lowest pressures last year at 152. I think they're much better in pass protection than they are in as a run blocking unit. They have Elton Jenkins, Zach Tom, Rashad Weaver. All 3 of those guys are really good in pass protection. Zach Tom, quietly a fantastic player. If you don't know, get to know. Absolutely love him. He's verging on elite, dare I say. And he's excellent in run and pass protection. And then we didn't see Jordan Morgan due to injury last year, the rookie they drafted in the 1st round because of an injury. And they also drafted Anthony Belton in the 2nd this year. So they've got a core of really great guys, but they've also got 2 exciting young players as well. So you kind of get the best of both worlds there. And with Matt LaFleur and his offensive system, I think the Packers have the potential to be one of the better offensive lines in the league. Genuinely, I'm going to put them in the great tier. I think they are potentially, and I think they're a top 10 unit. So I'll see where they end up and I'll move things around if they're not there. But I think the Packers are definitely on the verge of that at this point with their offensive line. The Indianapolis Colts. The Colts know what they want to do offensively. And you can tell that by their offensive line, right? You've got Bernard Ryman. He's a great offensive tackle. You've got Quentin Nelson, perennial All-Pro at guard, perennially great player. Most sure thing of a draft pick you'll ever see in your whole life. I know they drafted him early. You don't draft interior offensive linemen that early. If you know someone's going to be that good, you take him. And then Braden Smith as well. He's not going to blow anyone away at the other tackle spot, but he can still be productive and reliable enough. And they have lost Will Freeze. They have lost Ryan Kelly. That is big. I think continuity along the offensive line matters. They've brought in Tanner Bordolini. They brought in Matt Gon. I knew I was going to get his name wrong. It's spelt Goncalves, but I believe it's pronounced Gonsalves. Put a bit of Spanish twang on that one. And they both saw time last year for that system, so it's not a total reset. But I do think that nevertheless, from Freeze and Ryan, it is a downgrade. They had the 4th best run blocking offensive line per ESPN's pass block win rate. And they're going to want to run the ball first. They're going to play a lot of RPOs with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, a lot of short game stuff. That's what they want to do. But ultimately, you're going to have to pass protect. And when you're pass protecting for a quarterback like Daniel Jones and like Anthony Richardson, I think you're going to get exposed. And they were 25th last year in pass pro win rate per ESPN. And that is a big discrepancy between your kind of efficiency on your ability and talent in the run game versus that in the passing game. And I think with the fact that they're not great passing quarterbacks, I think that means that that's going to be the weak link for this team. Not necessarily a player is, more kind of what they are good and not good at collectively. I'm going to put this... See, the thing is, they're a great run game team, and they're probably a questionable passing game team. So where do I leave them then? Maybe at the back of average? I'd probably rather have the Colts than the... It's hard when they're all ranked here. I think I'll leave them there. I think calling the Colts an average line is definitely the case. But I think I might feel better than the Jets for now. I think they're a more sure thing than the Colts and the Jets and the Cowboys because they're less built on youth, I would say. Now the Titans, they had the biggest offensive line upgrade this year purely because they got rid of Nicolas Petit-Frere, who was genuinely awful. Genuinely awful. They've now got Dan Moore at left tackle. They overpaid for him. He's the definition of a fine tackle, but that's what gets paid these days in the NFL is by making your offensive line at least average. As I said, if you're average or above, you're not really going to have a problem necessarily. It's when your offensive line is sub-average, is subpar, is questionable or bad. And I think the Titans' moves this offseason hasn't been trying to make their offensive line elite. It's been about trying to make their offensive line not questionable and not bad, therefore average. Dan Moore, as I said, at left tackle. Added Kevin Zeitler as well from Detroit. Don't have the luxury of time anymore to kind of wait for guys to develop. They need to bring in guys now, and those guys will raise the floor, undeniably. Peter Skoronski, I loved him coming out. I think he is their best pure pass blocker. Lloyd Cushenberry, he missed most of last season, but he's a nice center, solid. He got a big payday from the Titans. They're going to hope to get value for that this season, definitely. Kevin Zeitler, as I said, effective veteran, raises the floor. And JC Latham, the rookie, he took his lumps initially. He's now going to move back to right tackle, which is his favored position. And I think despite taking those lumps early on, really finding it difficult to learn the other position. It's not the exact same playing left tackle, playing right tackle. You use your legs differently. It's opposite. They say it's like eating with your other hand, right? Which isn't going to be easy. And with Latham, yeah, he took his licks, but ultimately I think he kind of showed that he could be a potentially good to great tackle. But right now I think he gives you average tackle play, which for a rookie is a good thing, I would say. And this offensive line, therefore, I think is going to be much improved from last year. You're going to see, obviously, JC Latham, hopefully, JC Latham take that step. Dan Moore's going to be fine. Kevin Zeitler's going to be good. Peter Skoronski will continue to be good as well. I think this offensive line is going to be pretty improved from last year, even if Cam Ward does hold onto the ball for quite a long time. I think no, maybe not good. I'll put them in average, though. But the youth thing again with the Jets and the Cowboys, I'll put the Titans there. I think they're comfortably going to be average. It's just a question of how average within that tier. The Chiefs, they lost the Super Bowl because of their offensive line woes. Is that going to happen again in 2025? Have they addressed their left tackle issue? Let's take a look. They lost Joe Thuney, someone they had to start at left tackle, who got dog-walked by Jalix Hunt in the Super Bowl because he's a guard playing tackle who has shorter arms. Now, Joe Thuney, despite not maybe being a great tackle, is definitely a great guard. That loss is going to be felt, definitely. They've drafted then to fill that left tackle spot. They drafted Josh Simmons from Ohio State in the first round. He's a tricky evaluation. I liked what I saw from him. He was great on the field, but when he was on the field, he was playing against Akron, Marshall. He wasn't playing against the stronger teams in college football. And then before he could do that, he got injured. So he played lesser competition, looked good doing so, but then missed a lot of time. I think that's going to cause a bit of problems for him. We already know that offensive tackle rookies struggle. And he's not played for a while. I think he's going to definitely struggle, therefore. Creed Humphrey at centre, absolutely amazing. One of the best centres in the game. Love him. Juwan Taylor, been good. Maybe not as good as his price tag would suggest. And they're going to move Kingsley Suamataia from left tackle to left guard, which might help him after his disastrous left tackle showing. I don't know, though. I think the 2021 Chiefs offensive line is gone, right? Long gone. And I think we're now, especially the interior of that offensive line, and I think now they're questionable, frankly. I think they are questionable. I think after the Jags, definitely ahead of the Bengals, but I would say the Chiefs at this point have a questionable offensive line. The Dolphins, it was a bad year for the Dolphins, a bad year for the Dolphins offense and a bad year for the Dolphins offensive line. Teron Armstead retired. The Dolphins couldn't run the ball, especially in the red zone. They just didn't really have the talent and the weight and the bodies to do so. So they were 28th in pass block win rate, 26th in run block in pass. Sorry, they were 28th in pass block win rate, 26th in run block win rate. Not good. Clearly, only 32 NFL teams. They've reworked their interior. They've added James Daniels from Pittsburgh. They added Aaron Brewer from Tennessee in free agency, and they drafted Jonas Awainea. Now, it's hard for the Dolphins because of the offensive system they run, because they need their tackles to be quick and athletic, that they can't just pick up any old Tom, Dick, and Harry in the draft or in free agency. What they need from their offensive linemen is very specific, so it's hard for them to find their guys, but they did find 3 of them, and they will fit that mold definitely, especially Jonas Awainea, who I'm really excited to see. I think those 3 are going to be an upgrade. I am worried, though, about their tackles. I'm worried about Patrick Paul, and I'm worried about Austin Jackson. Austin Jackson coming off a torn meniscus, and Patrick Paul just not being good. So I think they might be better because of that upgrade to the interior. But the tackles really do concern me. They really do concern me. I think they might be questionable at best, or most likely bad, I would say. And that is going to really undermine the system, I think. We saw that last year, and unfortunately, despite there being upgrades, it might not be as bad. I don't think it's going to be much better than that, though, to be honest. The Minnesota Vikings, great offense, and their offensive line is no exception. JJ McCarthy, you're a very lucky man. They have Christian Darrisaw coming off a torn ACL, but when he's healthy, he's a fantastic tackle. They've reworked their interior. They drafted Jackson Donovan from Ohio State as their first-round pick. Surprising. A lot of people didn't like it. I did. Brought in Ryan Kelly and Will Freeze from Indianapolis. So they have 3 new interior offensive linemen. And of course, they got Brian O'Neill at tackle as well. Tackle duo, solid. Interior offensive line, solid. I love the offseason moves. I think they have just made their offensive line good throughout, really. The Vikings were second last year in pass block win rate. And I think that offensive line has got better. I think Darrisaw back healthy, huge addition. I think they're going to get better at running the ball as well. I think they're going to be a great offensive line for a great offense. I'm going to put them in front of the Packers. I'm going to put them here. I'm going to put them at the top of great. I think the Vikings are a really good offensive line. Great offensive line, dare I say. And I think JJ McCarthy is going to reap the benefits of that. The Buffalo Bills, they did well as a team and as a unit last year. And it's entirely the same group, which makes the evaluation pretty easy because continuity is absolutely there. Josh Allen does a lot of the work, don't get me wrong. But conversely, he's also not easy to block for because he's moving around so much. So yes, he offsets a lot of the pressure and a lot of the sacks by just evading them. But also when he holds onto the ball for more than 2 seconds, it makes the job of his offensive line very difficult. So it is a give and take there. And they only allowed 6 sacks per PFF last year. Josh Allen was sacked 11 times, I believe. So PFF charged Allen with 5 of those sacks, only charged his offensive line with 6, which is incredible, obviously, for a season. And they had the 4th highest pass block win rate per ESPN. They have Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown as their tackle duo. That's a really strong tackle duo. I love the interior trio as well of David Edwards, Connor McGovern, and Osiris Torrance. I think that's really strong. And I think that offensive line will definitely be good. I think Josh Allen will be good. It's a question of whether they will be good enough to get them over the hump, really. But I think the Bills are comfortably at the top of good with their offensive line. The Patriots, not a good 2024 campaign, but I'm hopeful for their 2025 outlook, definitely. They have a new regime, a new starting quarterback for the season. Obviously, Drake May did start last year, but a new kind of season opener starting quarterback. And they've got new offensive line additions as well. Will Campbell was my OT1 in the draft, top 5 player on my big board. Short arms be damned. He can play. I think he gives... I understand he might not give as high a ceiling as maybe an Amon Membu, but I think he does give a really high floor. I think he's just a very solid overall player and will definitely upgrade that left tackle position, and immediately so. We've got Cole Strange, awful pick, but when he's healthy, he's an okay player. But again, a mental pick there. And then we got Garrett Bradbury, good pass blocking center, another definite upgrade. Maybe not the highest of ceilings, but again, a definite higher floor. Mike Onwenu, he's a solid guard at right guard, and Morgan Moses is a good right tackle, I think. So with a new offensive system and a new cultural identity under offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels and head coach Mike Vrabel, and new offensive talent, yeah, it's not going to blow you away. I'm not saying it's going to be in the elite tier by any means, but I think it's going to be better. And I think the offense as a whole is going to be better. And that symbiotic relationship is going to both help the offensive line and the offense, frankly. So I'm hoping for average here for the Patriots. They could end up being questionable, but would I rather have the Titans offensive line or the Patriots offensive line? That's the question. I really like Will Campbell. So I'm going to put the Patriots ahead of the Titans, despite both of them last year being terrible. So big projection there from those guys. The New Orleans Saints. Big changes in New Orleans, and the offensive line is no exception here. They drafted Kelvin Banks Jr. to play left tackle for them. Ryan Ramczyk retired. Derek Carr retired. New head coach Kellen Moore. A lot of change. Now, the drafting of Kelvin Banks, I was higher on him than most. I liked his floor. I liked his experience. Did have a massive problem with balance issues. Kept getting kind of thrown onto the ground with a push-pull move. He needs to sort that out, definitely. But I do think that, again, he offers a bit like, what's his name? Will Campbell. He is going to offer a higher floor than was there. Not Ryan Ramczyk higher floor. He was fantastic. But a higher floor than what they were having before that. I think Trevor Penning is great in pass pro, but not in the run game. He's decent at left guard. It'll either be him or Dylan Radins. I think you can kind of go with the hot hand there, which is always useful for the depth. Eric McCoy, I think he's a quietly elite center. People don't talk about him, but he's a fantastic run blocker. He's strong in pass pro. He's a great player. Didn't allow a single sack last year. He's really good. Cesar Ruiz, definition of dependable, I think. And Tailisi Fwanga, he moves back to right tackle. He looked the best of all the rookie offensive linemen last year, I would say. And he had pancakes galore on his NFL tape. And I'm expecting a big jump from here this year. So I think this is an above average offensive line on the whole. I'm going to put them at the back end of good, I would say. I'm looking at that Detroit Lions, and I think that's the one that's going to cause the most controversy. Is having them behind the Saints. Yeah, in good conscience, I can't do that. I'm going to upgrade the Lions into good. But the back end of good. But I am going to upgrade the Lions to good. So Lions fans, if you've commented already, hope you've watched this far. The Bucs, they were great last year. And there's been no change. And I'm expecting them to pick off exactly where they left off. They have Tristan Wirfs, the best younger tackle. I don't think we can call him young anymore. He was drafted in 2020. But he's a fantastic young tackle. Elite pass blocker. He was first in the offensive tackle pass block win rate. Allowed 0 sacks. Only allowed 13 pressures. We've got Ben Bredesen, not overly confident in him at left guard. I think he's kind of trending in the wrong direction. Graham Barton, though, hugely impactful as a rookie. The play that he brought to center, I think, made the whole offensive line as a unit play better, which is why I was banging the table for someone like Gray Zabel, who I'll talk about in a second for the Seahawks. But I think he was really good last year, brought stability to a really strong unit, only allowed 1 sack last year. Cody Mork, he's a nasty mauling guard, good in run and pass protection. And Luke Goedeke, who's a strong complementary tackle. He's very well-rounded. I think the offensive line as a whole here is really well-rounded. And even better than that, I think it's probably an elite offensive line unit, frankly. Yes, they lost Liam Cohen, but they kept the offensive line. And that is essential when you have a quarterback like Baker Mayfield, who is at his best, much like most quarterbacks in the league, but more so Baker than others, is at his best with a good to great offensive line. And really, I think this offensive line is one of the elites in the NFL, frankly. The Ravens, such a strong team, and their offensive line is absolutely no different. Again, the Ravens, I've said it before, they just have such a strong identity, which just runs throughout their team, their players, their unit. The offensive line is solid, dependable, knows what it's doing. They got Ronnie Stanley. He was finally healthy all season last season. He looked great, only allowed 2 sacks. Andrew Voorhees, he's replacing Patrick McCarry. He's the probable weak link. He's not played a lot of football, which is why I'm saying that. He was only drafted in the 7th round because he injured himself at the combine, which was a shame for him. But he's a talented player nevertheless. Tyler Linderbaum, easy pick. Again, when you know a good offensive lineman, just draft them. They're going to be good. He's one of the better centers in the league, definitely. Daniel Fa'alele, he's a monster. 97th percentile height, 99th percentile weight offensive lineman. 6'8", 385 pounds. Obviously a mauler in the run game. And Roger Rosengarten is also a good tackle as well. They were 3rd in run block win rate, 3rd in pass block win rate. Really well-rounded, really strong offensive line. I am concerned about Voorhees, which is what keeps them maybe out of the elite tier. I think the other 3 offensive line in that tier, I feel good about almost every single one of them for the most part. But overall, it's a comfortably great offensive line. I think it's pretty comfortably going to be my 4th best offensive line. The Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers of old are dead. Gone are the days of bottling it in the playoffs and having our defense be run over. Long live the Harbaugh-led Chargers, is what I'm going to say. Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt. I questioned the Alt pick on the night. Obviously, since then, it's been fantastic. Having two of the better, younger tackles in the league just sets your team and your offense up for so much success. Dare I say, they are the second best tackle duo behind Mailata and Lane Johnson. It's early for Alt, but we saw him immediately almost be in contention for Rookie of the Year, frankly, I think. Now, not over Jaden Daniels, ultimately, obviously, but he was that good. You've also then got Joe Alt following that next generation. You've got Rashawn Slater being that kind of both of them are going to kind of age differently throughout the offensive line's history almost, because they were drafted a few years apart. But they're just going to give such stability, such a high floor. And then I'm expecting Alt really to build on that rookie season. And we've got Mekhi Becton, who is the Goliath at right guard. Of course, he was brought in to help the run game, something Harbaugh loves. And I think they're going to be running the ball a lot, really. And it is comfortably a great offensive line on the tackle duo alone. I'd say it's better than the Packers. I'd say it's better than the Bears. Is it better than the Bears? Depends. It's just all on the tackles, really, isn't it? I think we'll put them in the back of great. The Chargers. Yeah, back of great. The Commanders. They're coming off a huge year with Jaden Daniels, and they're obviously looking to build on that this year. Will their offensive line help or hinder them? Now, at left tackle, they have Laramie Tunsil, traded for him. Great get for them. Massive loss for us, but a great get for them. That's going to immediately raise the floor, immensely valued to the offense. Brandon Coleman, he's going to kick inside from tackle to guard, probably be the left guard. Should help him, I think, when there's less space to work and you don't get beat around the outside. It's not an easier position to play, but if you're struggling with the space that you have to operate in at tackle, moving to guard definitely helps that. Tyler Biadasz, very effective center. Sam Cosmi, love Sam Cosmi, but he did tear his ACL in the playoffs. Doubt he'll be back for the beginning of the season. Hopefully he'll be back soon, though. Probably going to have Andrew Wiley kick in to right guard, and then have Josh Connolly Jr., the first-round rookie they drafted this year, play right tackle. I had him as a first-round tackle, Josh Connolly Jr., but only at the back end of the first round. He is not a Will Campbell, a Marlon Membu, even a Josh Simmons. He was kind of comfortably a fringe first-round player for me. Good, but not great, is what I would say. Now, the offensive line feels a bit patchwork for the Commanders. I like the players they have. I just don't know if they're all going to play up to how well they could all play. Lots of movement, new faces. I think I like Tunsil. Cosmi's injured. And we got Josh Conley Jr. as a rookie. I think they're going to be an average offensive line, which is a good thing. Definitely. The Falcons. Poster child. This team is the poster child for having a solid overall unit over having one or two elite players, really. They've got Jake Matthews at left tackle. He's a great pass blocker. They've got Matthew Bergeron and Chris Lindstrom, really strong guards in the middle there. And they've got Caleb McGarry at right tackle, who's a really great run blocker. And they've all been solid as a unit playing together now for the last few years, really. Now, they do have a new center, Ryan Newsill, who's going to be the question mark there, stepping in for Drew Dalman. He did it last year when he needed to when Dan was injured. Far from exciting, I would say. I think they're going to be good, though, I would say, this year, which is important for a quarterback like Michael Penix, who has an injury history. You don't really want him getting hit. Has an absolute rocket on him, can be a really good pocket passing quarterback. And it's exciting for him to have that outlook. I do think this is a good offensive line for the most part. I think it's better than the Lions. Yeah. I think it's pretty comfortably good, actually, the Falcons, to be fair. Only losing their center, comfortably good offensive line. The Giants. The defensive line is great. Much less sure about the offensive line. To put it bluntly, I'm worried about the offensive line in New York. Yes, they've got Andrew Thomas at left tackle. Great. When he's healthy, he's one of the better tackles in the league. Top 10, I would say. But he can't stay healthy. And it's not that helpful to have a great tackle, but only have him for 8 games a season. That's how the offensive line works. You just kind of want a baseline of good play, good to average play. You don't want kind of peaks and troughs with your offensive line. And that happens when you have someone that has a high injury history, really, which Andrew Thomas unfortunately does. We've then got John Runyon. He's fine. John Michael Schmitz, unfortunately, he's also fine. Had high hopes for him coming out of the draft 2 years ago now. 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago. But didn't have a hot start. Greg Van Roten, he's fine. Jermaine Luminor, London's finest. Grew up in Chalk Farm, just down the road from me. Not going to say exactly where I live, but very close. Got to shout out the international players. He's the definition of a better than average tackle, which in the NFL, again, a good thing to have. But this offensive line hinges on Andrew Thomas, which is a scary prospect to be in because he is injury prone at this point, I think. And if he's healthy, it'll be good to average. If he's not, it's going to be questionable to bad, really. So I'm going to have to put it in the questionable tier, I think. And behind the Bengals, which is ugly. Yeah, it's going to go in the questionable tier. The 49ers, initially I was unsure what to make of this offensive line, but I actually feel quite good about it now. Trent Williams at left tackle, one of the best tackles in the game still, not getting any younger, but for 2025, which is what we're talking about here, I feel confident about that outlook still. We've got Ben Barch and Dominic Pooney. I'm intrigued by both of them at both guard spots. Barch only saw one game, but Dominic Pooney, as a rookie last year, looked really good, I thought, in both run and pass blocking. And Jake Brendel, he's all right as well as the center. Not great in pass pro, though. And Colt McKivitz, someone I really did not like previously. He actually played pretty well last season, thankfully for the 49ers. And I think the whole team is going through a transition, we'll say, with a lot of the players defensively moving on. They're having to pay Brock Purdy. The offensive line, though, is quietly pretty solid. And the scheme's going to help too with the play action usage and the play calling, etc. I'm going to say this is a good offensive line. And I would probably rather have it ahead of the New Orleans offensive line just because there doesn't have that rookie element to it. But I think it's a good offensive line, genuinely. The Seahawks. Seahawks fans, I don't know if we're going to see eye to eye on this, but I'm worried about this offensive line. I think Geno Smith last year was a bit of an unsung hero for you in how much he offset the pressure that the interior offensive line allowed. And I'm worried that they haven't addressed that flaw enough. Yes, they did it through the draft, but I would have liked to see another addition, really. So we have Charles Cross at left tackle. He is genuinely a good offensive tackle. No issues or concerns about him whatsoever. Abraham Lucas, just about serviceable at the right tackle spot, we'll say. Oluwatimi and Christian Haynes, I'm not sold on them as the guard spots, really. Now, Gray Zabel, the center and right guard spot. Now, Gray Zabel, who's going to play left guard, I love him. He was a top 16 player on my big board. The Seahawks did an absolute blinder to get him. Great move from them. I was worried he was going to go earlier. Fell right into their laps. Brilliant. Great pick. He's going to be, I think, kind of that rock solid, that Graham Barton, maybe a kind of Quentin Nelson-esque, maybe not immediately as good as that, but definitely kind of bringing that level of stability and floor to the position. But the whole of the right side, Oluwatimi at center, Christian Haynes at right guard, Abraham Lucas at right tackle, I'm not loving it. I am not loving it. And Sam Darnold is a very susceptible quarterback to interior pressure. We saw that blow up the Viking season when he was getting sacked on sacked. So yeah, you might struggle to get through on the left side with Charles Cross and Gray Zabel, but you've got 3/5 of it on the other side who are going to be a bit easier to get through, I think. And I think Darnold's going to struggle with that. And there could be an impending disaster in Seattle because of it. I'm going to put them in bad. Top of bad, because I do like Cross, I do like Zabel. And maybe Oluwatimi and Haynes can be okay, but I'm not loving it. Penultimately, we have the Los Angeles Rams. Started out tough for them last year, offensive line-wise, but they really found their feet as the season went on. Alaric Jackson, he was an unbelievable free agent find. He was great last year, been really strong previously. He only allowed 3 sacks. Steve Avila, really liked him coming out in the draft as well. He's a good run blocker, needs work in pass pro. Coleman Sheldon, familiar face with the offense, went to the Bears for 1 year, came back. He knows the system. He's fine. Kevin Dotson and Rob Havenstein at right guard and right tackle. Solid solid right tackle and right guard to have, good in run and pass blocking. They were 12th best run game by ESPN's run block win rate. And of course, Sean McVay's system is going to play to their strengths. I think they're a pretty decent, good to great offensive line. I'll put them there, I feel. I do like what the Falcons do. I think they're more solid overall. I think the Panthers, while I like their outlook maybe more this season, if we're going off flaws, the Rams, I think, has to be higher than them. Last and almost least, I think with the Browns, mind the pun here, you can't teach an old dog's new tricks. Get it? Dog pound, dog. Oh, anyway. DeJuan Jones at left tackle. Horrible run blocker. He's a mediocre pass protector when he can get his hands on you, but that's kind of a big if with DeJuan Jones. He looked like he could be a bit of a find in the 4th round for them last year or the year before. Don't think he is really a find anymore. And then you've got Joel Bitonio at left guard, Ethan Poach at center, Wyatt Teller at right guard, Jack Conklin at right tackle. They're all good players. There's nothing wrong with any of them, but they're all on the decline, age-wise and therefore physically. I think specifically Bitonio, he's turning 34. He doesn't have the explosiveness anymore. Ethan Poach, he's been good. Again, getting older. Teller, he's on the decline. Conklin, he's going into his 10th season. When the Browns first got him, he was great. Not anymore. He's on the downturn. And so they allowed the 5th most pressures last year, 219. Yes, Deshaun Watson is no longer exacerbating a bad problem, but equally, they're not going to have gotten any better, I don't think. So I don't really see how that improves. And it's a question for me, because traditionally they have been good, I'm going to leave them I'm not going to put them in bad, but I'm definitely going to put them in questionable. I think they're above the Giants, though. I think the Giants I am more scared of than the Browns. So this is my 2025 offensive line rankings, the top 10 offensive lines. We have the Eagles, the Broncos, the Buccaneers as elites. We then have the Ravens, the Vikings, the Bears, the Cardinals, the Packers, the Chargers, and the Bills just sneak into the top 10 there, being in the good tier. But do you agree or disagree with these rankings? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you leave a like. Make sure you subscribe as well if you haven't already for more off-season NFL content. But I've been your host, Tom Corbs. This has been Corbs NFL. See you in the next video.